everybody, and today we're going to talk about culture. So we're going to talk about culture from two different perspectives. Yes, you're right, we didn't finish our Western expansion notes yesterday, and that's because I don't want to get too far ahead. I don't want to talk about something that we haven't even seen yet in our episodes. So we do them in half. So we did the first part in half, and then we do the other half later on. So no worries if you're thinking, oh, I should have this out. I just kind of wanted to remind you where we left off. You remember? We talked about how they were hunting buffalo for 3 reasons. The third was for sport. And I could not believe it when I saw this picture. Isn't that just sad? All buffalo skulls. And if you see the full picture, the other one's not as clear, but there's actually a guy standing on top of this mountain that's higher than the screen. It's really kind of a sad deal. Just kind of shows you how many they killed it very, very quickly. So today we're going to look at 2 things. We're going to start out by talking about the culture in a white settler's cabin or place they lived, and then we'll talk about Native American culture a little bit, okay? All right, let's start with the white culture first, because I have a little reading that I want to share with you. All right, so this was actually written about what life would be like in the 1500s, but it's actually very similar to what you might have found if you first moved out west. And you'll recognize a lot of slogans that maybe we even use today. So, for example, here's how it goes. The next time you're washing your hands and you complain that the water is cold, or you just don't like the temperature of the room you're in, like how cold it is in this room, for example, think about what things used to be like. Here are some facts about the old days. Most people got married in June because they took their yearly bath in June when all the rivers and the lakes thawed. Imagine that. So we didn't smell very good. So obviously, they wanted to get married when they smelled the best. So they would typically get married in June. That's also why ladies carry what with them? Flowers. The flowers were designed to cover up your body odor, because we obviously all smelled back then. So that was kind of interesting. Hence the custom today of carrying a bouquet when getting married. Now, baths consisted of a big tub filled with hot water. And of course, there was only one tub, and you didn't want to refill it all the time because you had to heat it on the stove. So this is how it would work. The man of the house had the privilege of the nice clean water first, then all the other sons and men in the family, then the women, and finally the children. Last of all, the babies. And by then, the water was so dirty that sometimes you could actually lose somebody in it. Hence the saying, if I can get it to work. Where'd it go? Maybe I'll choose this. Oh, there we go. Don't throw the baby out with the bath water. You ever heard that? Houses had thatched roofs, thick straw piled high, like you see here, probably a little bit thicker actually than that, okay? With no wood underneath. It was the only place for animals to get warm. So dogs, cats, and other little micey-like vermin would make their homes in there. Thus the saying that you had, don't let the bed bugs bite, because the bugs would fall through the roof into your bed. Sometimes snakes fell into your bed and things like that. And that's why we started with canopy beds way back then. They would put this canopy up, and it was to collect all the critters from falling into bed with you at night. Hopefully they would at least slither off to the side. Scary stuff. When it rained, it became very slippery, and sometimes the animals would slip and fall off the roof. Hence the saying, it is raining cats and dogs. You're right. That's where it comes from. So imagine them sliding right off you like that. There was nothing to stop things from falling into the house. This posed a real problem in the bedroom, where bugs and other droppings could really mess up that nice clean bed or your mood. Hence, a bed with big posts and a sheet hung over the top that afforded some protection. That's how canopy beds came into existence. The floor was made out of dirt. Only the wealthy had something other than dirt. Hence the saying, I'm dirt poor. I don't know if you've ever heard that before. My parents have said that before. The wealthy had slate floors that would get very slippery in the winter when it was wet, so they would spread thresh or straw on it to keep their footing, basically. As the winter wore on, they kept adding more and more straw until when you open the door, it would all start slipping outside. A piece of wood was placed in the entryway to kind of control all the thrush that was coming out. Hence the saying of carrying the bride across the threshold. Yes. Because thrush is straw. So that's where that comes from. In those old days, they cooked in the kitchen with a big kettle that always hung over the fire. Every day, they lit the fire and added things to the pot. They ate mostly vegetables, didn't get much meat, of course. They would eat the stew for dinner, leaving leftovers in the pot to get cold overnight, and then they would heat them up again the next day. Sometimes the stew had food in it that had been there for quite a while. Hence the rhyme, peas porridge hot, peas porridge cold, peas porridge in the pot. Not 3, 9 days old. Yeah, can you imagine eating something that was 9 days old just sitting out? You can imagine that they probably got sick sometimes from the food, kind of getting all yucky. Yeah. Now, sometimes they could obtain pork. That was a luxury, which made them feel quite special. When visitors came over, they would hang the pork up, which made them feel like rich, to kind of show off their wealth. It was a sign of wealth that a man could bring home the bacon. They would cut off a little to share with the guests, and all would sit around and chew the fat. You maybe heard that before. Those with money had plates made of pewter. You've ever seen pewter? It's like a heavy metal, right? Okay. Food with high acid content caused some of the lead out of the pewter to leach into the food, causing lead poisoning and death. This happened most often with tomatoes because tomatoes have a lot of acid in them. So for the next 400 years, they thought tomatoes were poisonous because people were dying from eating tomatoes, but it was not. It was that they collected the lead from the pewter that they were on. So kind of interesting about tomatoes. Now workers, back up. Bread was divided according to status. Now remember, you're cooking it on a fire basically, right? So you're not going to cook it nicely like you would in your oven that heats all the way around and all that, okay? Workers got the bottom loaf of the bread, the bottom portion. The family would get the middle, and of course, the guests got the top or the upper crust. So when we say that someone's part of the upper crust, that's where it comes from. Lead cups were used to drink ale or whiskey. We talked about why they did that, right? Why didn't they drink water? What was in the water that was causing problems? Bacteria. And they were getting sick from it, but they didn't understand why. So they would drink the alcohol because the alcohol would kill the bacteria. So they drank ale and whiskey in these lead cups, right? I gotta find my spot here. The combination would sometimes knock a person out for a couple of days, if you can imagine. Someone walking along the road would take them for dead and prepare them for burial. They were laid out on a kitchen table for a while to see if they would wake up. Hence the custom of holding a wake after somebody dies, because they're waiting to see if they will wake up. England is old and small, and the local folks started running out of places to bury people. So they would dig up coffins and would take the bones to a bone house and reuse the grave. When reopening these coffins, they couldn't believe what they found. 1 out of every 25 had scratch marks on the inside. They had buried these people thinking they were dead, but they were just passed out from the alcohol. So from then on, they had to change things in the gravestone there, in the graveyard anyway. So here's what they would do. They would tie a string to the wrist of the corpse. So imagine him in a coffin underground. They would run the string up through the ground and put it up above the grave and attach it to a bell. So then if he moved his wrist, the bell would ring and the guy would come and save him and he wouldn't die in a coffin alive. You know what I mean? Kind of freaky. So some slogans came from that as well. So sometimes you'd have to sit out in the graveyard all night to listen for the bell. That's why we call it the graveyard shift. That's where that comes from. To listen for the bell. Then someone could be saved by the bell or was considered a dead ringer. How cool is that? I wanted to show you a couple of other areas here. Hold on there. This is another form of housing that they had. Like we said, trees were really valuable on the land that you got. So a lot of people actually lived in the hills. And you can imagine the critters that would dig through your roof there and fall into your bed and things like that. That's just one example. And then once they were wealthy enough to save up for timber, then they would start building. This is actually, believe it or not, a sod house. It's made out of like grass and sod. And it is a 2-story house. Couldn't believe it. But yes, it is. Now here's what they did. They had enough money for wood to do a frame. So they had a little bit more than the common person. So what they did is they made the frame out of wood. They even made the floor in between out of wood so it would hold up the second floor. But then the outside, they didn't have enough. So they used sod on the outside. And eventually, I'm sure they replaced that too. Isn't that cool? All right. So now let's take a look at our Indian culture a little bit. And it's going to be an interactive day. So the first person to raise their hand and give me the answer to my question gets a prize. Are you ready? Okay. I think this one I can just touch it. Okay. Who first discovered America? Actually, it is not correct. Indians, that is the correct answer. We know that Native Americans crossed over from Siberia, over here, you know, where Russia is and all that, crossed over from Siberia about 10 to 12,000 years ago during the Ice Age, because remember that these were closer and even connected at one point. So we think they crossed over there. And we also had some that came from South America up through Central America and moved into southwestern United States. And that's why you'll see that our Indian tribes are very different looking, depending on where you are, right? If you've ever seen some of the southwestern tribes, they have a very different look than Lakota or even the tribes in Alaska. Why were Native Americans called Indians? Tell me the story. Yes, that is correct. Columbus thought he had discovered India. Actually, he had discovered the Bahamas. Now, take a look at this map. It's quite a difference, right? But I guess it's in the same area of the map, like as far as the latitude. Is it latitude or longitude? This way is latitude, right? So kind of interesting. So he called all the people he saw in the New World Indians, and that's where it comes from. Kind of funny. How many Native Americans lived in America before Europeans arrived? Got a guess? Give me a guess. Nope.
5 million.
Close enough. The answer is actually, we don't know for sure because obviously we didn't have paperwork. It ranges from 1.5 million to 18 million. Now that's a pretty big range, but the point is there were a heck of a lot of people here before we ever got here. That's my point. And if you look at this map, I had to do this assignment. I had to make a poster for a professor of mine in college that put all of the tribes in the U.S. on this map. I had no idea there were that many. I mean, seriously, you know, we think of the big names like the Cherokee and the Lakota, but if you look at this, they're just rampant over here along the coast on both sides. And we'll look even closer at that in a little bit. Yeah. What's that? Oh, I'm sorry. Did I miss you? You're looking at me like, what is going on? There you go. Just hold on to the extras. I'll grab them at the end. Okay. Is there anybody else that's missing their notes? Was there a Sioux tribe? Was there actually a Sioux tribe? No. Where did the name Sioux come from? Anybody know? Yeah. It means snake or enemy. Yes. So here's what happened. The explorers that came over to our area of the country were French explorers, and they used the Chippewa as guides as they went through our territory. Well, the Chippewa was the enemy to the Lakota, right? So they called them Sioux, meaning the enemy of our people, and the white people kind of picked up on it, and they became the Sioux. But actually, it refers to 3 different groups. Let me move this over so you can see it. There are actually 3 groups that comprise the Sioux Nation then and today. A lot of people don't realize this. You have the Lakota, which are in South Dakota Territory, right? We have the Dakota that were up in Minnesota. And then we have the Nakota or Yankton, which are in South Dakota as well. So if you think of the 3 Dakotas and then just add L, D, and N, you got it for your test. There are 3 parts. And you'll see that they're broken down into these particular tribes. So the Lakota include the Oglala, Sikanju, Hunkpapa, Minikanjus, and so on. The Dakota are the Wahpeton, the Sisseton, you maybe heard of them before. The Yankton or Nakota include the Yankton or Upper Yankton tribes. So that is what we mean when we say Sioux. So actually Sioux is a very negative term to them. Maybe not so much today, but back then it was very negative. In fact, think about Sioux Falls means what? Enemy Falls. It's not a very positive thing when you think about it, is it? Kind of weird. Okay, which western state is named after an Indian tribe? Any idea? I'll give you a hint, so you can come up with it. It starts with a U. Yes. Utah, and what tribe? You know? Anybody know the tribe? Close. Close, you know? No? It's the Ute tribe. Utah comes from the Ute tribe, who lived right over there. Yeah. So I'm going to show you that map that we talked about. And I want you to see what other tribal names we use in our culture today. Because I think you'll find there's a lot of them, actually. Let me move this out of the way. What kind of things do you see on this map? I know you can't see as much in the back. What's that? Erie is in like Lake Erie. Good. What else? Yeah. Lakota. Dakota is in South Dakota. Good. Cheyenne. Like Cheyenne, Wyoming. There's a whole bunch more. What else do you say? Atlanta, good. Wichita, Kansas comes from the Kansa tribe, K-A-N-S-A. There's a Missouri tribe. That's obviously how we got that name from. The Iowa tribe for Iowa. Minikanju is part of that idea of Minnesota. If you look over here too, there's a whole bunch as well. There's just so many. Yuma is another one. All kinds. Pretty cool when you look at it. They have a great influence on our culture, and I don't think people even realize it. So what sport did Native Americans play that had up to 200 players and is still played today? Any guess? Nope. Close. Lacrosse is correct. You ready, Ryan? Coming at you. Yes, lacrosse is correct. Yep. In that day, the Choctaw called it stick and ball game. And you can see they have the same kind of idea with the stick and the little thing on the end to catch the ball. But imagine 200 people playing all at once. How crazy that must have gotten. I'm sure there was a lot of elbowing and punching and shoving people out of the way. Yeah. Oklahoma. Yeah. And obviously, we use that today, too. We've added some gear to wear it to protect us a little bit. Which tribe did not bury their dead? They actually put them in scaffolding in trees. The Lakota. Yes. The Plains Indians. And another one that's from our region, the Huron tribe. They also did it, but they did it differently. The Plains Indians used scaffolding in trees. And then once our soldiers came out here, they outlawed it because they were finding dead bodies in the trees. But if you look at the reason why they did it, it's really a very meaningful thing. They believed that if you buried them, their spirit would not be able to escape and go into the afterworld. So they put it up as high as they could so they could reach the afterworld. By burying them, it's actually going against all that they believe. So it's kind of a sad deal. You'll see that in the movie where they outlaw it. Yeah. Now the Huron would just leave the body out on the ground for about 12 years until it was a skeleton before they would bury the bones. And it was the same idea. They wanted the spirit to escape and go up to the afterworld. So they wanted to wait for that before they buried them. What kind of beauty secrets did the Plains Indian women use? Any ideas, ladies?
Flowers.
Close enough, yes. They used sage or sweetgrass to rub on them so they'd smell good for their significant other. Any other ideas, ladies? It's a whole bunch of them. Just think about what you put on and what they might use. How do you think they comb their hair? No, they actually use something. Good guess. What's that? Good guess. Something that would be kind of prickly. Porcupines. Yeah, they use porcupine quills to actually comb their hair. What do you suppose they use for makeup? Ladies, raise your hand. No, not poop. Think about what gives you color. Not dirt. What would give you a reddish color? No, not blood. Although I will tell you that in the earlier settlers' days, women would pinch their cheeks a lot to give it color. So they did do that for there. No? Yeah, fruit, berries. They would rub berries on their cheeks too. I don't have that on your sheet, but they would use that. They also did this in one particular tribe because different tribes had different ages that made her a woman. So she was open to mating with a man and marrying. So these ladies would paint their part red in their hair. And that was a sign that they were available to marry now. They were old enough. Most of them, it was like age 12 to 15, usually. Usually much younger than what we get married at. Which tribes had to kill to become a man? There are 3. They start with the C. Not the Cherokee. It's the only one that's not. Nope. They're over by the Cherokee and they all marched on the Trail of Tears. Yep. Nope. Do you remember them? The Chickasaw, the Creek, and the Choctaw. And they had to wound or kill an enemy in battle to be considered an adult. So you can imagine, you don't want to really run into them, right? On just a little pathway, because they have to do that to become an adult. So they were very warlike, unlike the Lakota. How did Plainsmen celebrate their first buffalo kill? If you look at your notes, they're giving you a hint. Just didn't tell you what. What do you think it is? Wildy, you got it? Look at your thing there.
They boast and share among their friends.
They did share among their friends. What'd they have to eat? No, not the testicles. Not the heart. Nope. The tongue. That is correct. Yes. They would be given the tastiest part, which is the tongue. But it was proper etiquette when you would go to eat it to say, oh, you go first. And they would share it with the people with them in the hunting tribe. And then they would take their own little bite of the tongue. Now imagine, that's not cooked, is it? Right? Yeah, I'm just saying. What was the most painful ceremony? I bet you can guess by looking. The sun dance is considered among almost all the tribes as the worst. It is the most painful. Yes, and that was taking place right here in South Dakota. They implanted skewers into their chest, and then some would actually, if you see some of the paintings, they aren't just leaning, but they're actually like hanging from a tree until it would break through the skin, and then they would have a vision. Whew, not very pleasant. Oh, sorry, did you not get it? Yeah. All right, let's see if you know a little bit of history already. What was the ghost dance? Anybody know what the ghost dance was? Yes, to bring back the dead. Anybody else know why they did the dance? Yeah, kind of the same thing, yes. No? I mean, it is recognizing them. There's two other reasons why they did it, actually. No? No, actually, there's another dance for that. They had a dance for pretty much everything. The ghost dance, they believed in basically three things would happen. They actually got it from a Paiute man out like northwest, and it carried across the nation word by word, basically. And he said that this dance would restore the old way of life, meaning bringing back the buffalo, because they were losing all their buffalo. Second, it would bring back the dead. And this one doesn't say it, but the third thing, so bring back the dead. And the third thing was it would make white man go away. Now notice it does not say we want all white men to die. That was not the interpretation. It was they wanted them to just leave. That was their hope. It would bring things back to the way it was. Yeah, it works so. We'll see that coming up in our story. Although it was a peaceful dance, most authorities saw it as threatening because the only thing they knew about Indians is that they did a war dance. So any dance to them was a war dance. And when you see it on the movie, I mean, these girls are screaming into convulsions on the ground. And as a white person, when you don't understand the culture, you can't speak the language, you're thinking, what are they doing? What are they getting ready for? So they outlawed it. And the Indians said, you can't outlaw a religion. It's not right. They kept doing it, and so eventually the soldiers go in to shut it down. How could a warrior achieve great honor in battle besides killing the enemy? I'll give you a hint. They went into battle with a coop stick. Here's a couple of them for you. What'd they have to do with it? No guesses? Yes, the enemy. The goal was to touch the enemy in battle without getting killed. And if you did that, then you were a warrior. This is just one picture of it here. You see he's touching him from behind there. They would distract him this way, and then he'd try to come around and touch him with a coop stick. Now think about that. Our first soldiers are coming over, and the Lakota did this. So they would go around trying to touch the enemy in battle. Meanwhile, we're shooting them with guns. When we first fought them, oh my goodness, it didn't go well for the Lakota because they were trying to touch them instead of kill them in battle. So yeah, they ended up having to get some guns as well and fight back. So that's, and you'll see a coop stick in our movie too. There's a kid in there that'll get a coop stick. Which tribe had warrior women? They did have women as leaders. Which tribe had women as leaders? An old school tribe, very powerful. Led on the Trail of Tears. The Cherokee is correct. Greatly respected women. In fact, they had what was called a war woman, and without her permission, the men would not go into battle. She was the one that made the decisions because they felt that men would get a little hot-headed in the situation, and they needed a woman to back up off the scene and go, should we go in or should we not? So that's why they did it. Here are just some of our women from the Cherokee tribe. Which famous person died while his arms were held back by a fellow Indian? There's only a few famous people you know already in the Indian culture. It is crazy, horse. You are right. Very sad ending. He was the greatest military fighter of all time, basically, in the Indian culture. His arms were held back by a traitor, little big man, because he had become a soldier. He was helping out the white soldiers, and then they bayoneted him. A very disrespectful way to die as a warrior. A warrior is willing to die, but they're going to die facing you, coming at you. It's okay if you die that way, but to die like that is very dishonorable. Only 4 presidents have visited reservations. Which ones are they? First one starts with a C. Lincoln did not. You would think he would, but he didn't. Yes, Clinton is later. Correct. There's another C before him. Nope. Not Carter. Coolidge. Coolidge was the first, actually. There is Coolidge on Pine Ridge Reservation in 1927. You'll notice it took them, well, reservations were enacted in 1889 after Wounded Knee, actually before that, but they were all basically put on reservations in 1889. It took them over 40 years for a president to actually visit a reservation. So this was a huge deal. That's why we still have pictures of it today for sure. Okay, so we have Clinton, we have Coolidge. Another person was very famous during the Great Depression years. Roosevelt is correct. Roosevelt was the next to visit the Cherokee, and that was in 1936, before World War II era. It was kind of a run-through, as you can see from the picture, though. He basically kind of drove in, shook some hands, and took off. It was not very long. The next one was Clinton. Now look at this gap. When Clinton came, it was a big deal. It was over 60-some years between the last president and him to visit a reservation. Clinton came to Pine Ridge right here in South Dakota. And I don't think you guys are probably old enough. Do any of you remember hearing about Clinton coming to Brandon? It was the first year I was ever here. Do you remember hearing about this? It was huge. So you know where the football practice field is? It was right before the Friday night football game. And President Clinton came to Brandon, South Dakota. They sectioned it all off. We all had to go through, the metal detectors. Okay, they had Secret Service all the way around, checking everything. They had Secret Service on the water tower with guns, watching everybody. It was really freaky. And Clinton came to Brandon, South Dakota. It was the first year I had moved here. I came from Arizona and moved here. It was weird, like, why'd he come to Brandon? It was really interesting. And that trip was then when he went over and he visited Pine Ridge. So it's cool. I was going to say, were you born? When were you born? What year?
December 30th, 1999.
Oh, the year some of you were born then. 98. So you were little babies at that time. Wow. Okay. And there's been one more since. Been in the news the last while. Obama, you're going to be rich with candy. Yes, President Obama went in 2014 to Standing Rock, again, in South Dakota. Now, why do you think they go to South Dakota? Any ideas? It's what? Yeah, well, Oklahoma was, but then we got rid of that one. This state is one of the first. It also had the most, probably the most of our state is taken up by reservations than any other state. So, and Pine Ridge in particular is kind of, like I said, the hotbed of Indian activity. If there's anybody that's angry, they're usually on Pine Ridge because that's where Wounded Knee happened. So they have a lot of hurt feelings about that, which I get. I mean, we just slaughtered women and children. It was awful. But so a lot of times the leader will want to go there to kind of make peace and keep things under control. So Not very much, not as much as you'd think, right? Which tribe is known for building large, tall skyscrapers on the East Coast? Starts with an M. No, that's up in North Dakota. This tribe is known for a hairstyle. The Mohawk tribe, yeah. Really weird. They found that as they hired them for construction, I'm talking like the North New York type skyscrapers, they were totally comfortable with heights. Just loved it. And they still are hired today. There was a big story on the computer. I was reading about it. They still hire a lot of Mohawk Indians to do that. They just feel that it's comfortable up there. I can't even imagine. Wow. Are Native Americans becoming extinct? Just a general question. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yes? Yes? A lot of yeses.
Like they're kind of intermixing, like most cultures are in America.
Okay.
My grandfather.
Okay. So not necessarily that we're losing the numbers, but we're losing the culture. Good point. Good point. And I think that's probably very true. Actually, the answer is no, they are not becoming extinct. They're not dying off as far as extinction. Are they losing their culture or intermixing? Probably, yes. I had some very good friends during college at USD when I was getting my master's, and it was really interesting. These two guys I was friends with had totally different perspectives. They were both from West River. One of them was getting a college degree to go back and make things better on Pine Ridge. The other one was getting a degree to get out of Dodge. He said the reservations are dead. Why stay? And they really are. Well, think about it. We gave them the worst land possible. The land where nothing grows, where there's no population. I mean, even a Walmart can't survive on Pine Ridge because you got nobody there, you know? You can't start a business because nobody comes through and buys things. So the only thing you can really do is put things there that people don't want elsewhere, like nuclear power plants. Casinos have been a big thing that have helped. Dumps, like garbage dumps. A lot of tribes are allowing that on their land because we don't want it on ours, which is giving people jobs at least. But a lot of the times they just don't have what they need to survive out there. So totally different perspectives. But I understand why they want to keep it because it's all they have left from those treaties. They want to hold on to it too. They can also do jobs online now. That's one thing that's helped with the computer if they have access. It's not always possible out in the middle of nowhere though. Okay, nice job, guys.